Oh, this is one of my favorite episodes that we do every year. This is the third time we're doing it. I am talking to my friend Aliza Kelly, and she is an incredible astrologer. And we are talking about the astrology of 2025. Oh my goodness, I am so happy that we are
We
back.
are back.
So here we are. Here we are. And oh my gosh, like, in a word, what was 2024 like for you?
I mean, for me, it was, my first year being a mother. So it
Yeah.
was a year of rebirth. It was a year
Mm,
of transition. And I do think that that speaks to the collective experience as well. It
mm,
is 2024, as we talked about last year, was a year of transition.
totally. And it's felt like for me, and I know all these years since 2019 have kind of felt like this, but particularly this one has felt like 10 years in one. Is it
Yeah.
just me?
No, I mean, I think that time is moving. We're in some sort of a
Mm,
really weird portal right now with time and the movement of time. It's moving so, at least to me, profoundly quickly. And
mm,
when I talk to people from all ages, people who are 40 years older than me, people who are 15 years younger than me, everyone is feeling this speed, this accelerated speed that we're moving through right now. And I wonder if it's because we're still sort of making up for the lost time that we had during the pandemic, and that brought us into a very weird sort of time movement to
mm,
hopefully it'll slow down again because life, I want to relish this time. It's so sacred.
mm,
I don't
mm.
want to just barrel through all of the years.
Yeah, it's so true. We're recording this at the end of December of 2024, and myself, I've got two kids who have fevers. They've been sick all week, and oh my God, I swear it's like they're processing everything from the year that we've just been in, and and
Mm.
and I really feel within myself this deep, deep yearning to slow down and really reflect on the year that's been. And so
Yeah.
if we are to do that, in a nutshell, what was 2024?
So 2024 was a year of that was really defined by a transitional point of energy. Um, 2024, we had a lot of planets approaching the final degrees that they are going to be arriving at, or they were at the final degree in astrology. We refer to that as the anaretic degree, the 29th degree. And the way that I describe the 29th degree and this sort of because that's the final place a planet can be before transitioning into a new zodiac sign. So it's the degree of finality. And when we're at the 29-degree mark, it's sort of like a can of soda that's like shaking and getting ready to explode. But imagine if you didn't know what the contents in that can were. You know what I mean? Like
Mm,
you could think maybe it's Coca-Cola, or maybe it is confetti, or maybe it is something much more sinister, and we're all sort of experiencing this sensation of this tremor, this rattling, this um this curiosity, and also fear and anxiety around what is going to be on the other side when this thing bursts. And we're
mm,
feeling that in a number of different ways. I think a lot of people are manifesting this in this feeling of like, what is this all for? What am I doing this for? You know? And that is also the byproduct, I would say, of just, a society that we have all become so chronically online over the past few years,
mm,
and all of our dopamine receptors are like completely fizzling out right now. So we've been chasing these highs, and now we're like, I know that this doesn't actually move the needle,
mm,
what is the bigger purpose here? And
mm,
I think that that's part of this sort of reflection process, and the the curiosity that's baked into exploring, what's going to happen when this thing bursts, right? What am I going to
mm.
see on the other side of it?
Mm. And we know when we've been through those experiences that once we are at that bottom, or once we are looking at what was actually always inside, it's the only way that we can find true safety and true, I guess, like holding and groundedness, because without that, it's like we're this thing that we don't quite know what it is kind of running us, and we're running
Right.
away from it. But it's like it's all there. Like I remember Wayne Dyer, who was a Hay House author who's passed, he did this. It reminds me a bit of that analogy of the shaking can. Of he would say he would have an orange on stage, and he would say, "What would happen if I squeeze this?" And he'd get someone to squeeze it, and orange juice would come out. And he's like, "We're just like that. When we get squeezed, whatever is on the inside is coming out."
Mm.
And so I think I really love that analogy of 2024, and obviously the years before as well. But 2024 really has been that, hasn't it? It's like, what is really underneath the bonnet? Let's really take a look.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I know Pluto's just gone into Aquarius, because we spoke on my book launch day, which was what was that, November 19? So it was like about a month ago we spoke. And we're entering a new year now. So tell me a little bit about, like, what does this year feel like, look like? What's ahead? What I know it's impossible to fully prepare, but if we were to, give us the lowdown. What's coming?
Rebecca, there's so much to tell you about. There's so much. So if 2024 was the year of the trembling can that was bursting with pressure, 2025 is going to be when it explodes.
Mhm.
2025 is actually the year that we get to see what the contents are within this can. In 2025, we have planets doing things that they haven't done in a really, really, really long time. And
Wow.
from an astrological perspective, that's what makes something meaningful. That's what makes something rare. That's what makes something notable. And obviously, I always say that the astrology doesn't know that it's 2025. You know what I mean? Like the astrology does not have a Gregorian wall calendar up with
Right.
each month, cute puppy pictures. The
Yeah,
astrology is just
yeah.
astrology. And it just so happens that as we contain it to a year, as we say these next 12 months, we're going to call that 2025. A lot of cosmic activity is happening in that container of 2025. And
Mm,
from an astrological perspective, it's major. So, what
mm.
we can say is that 2025 is going to be a massive year. 2025 is going to be a year that changes everything. 2025 is going to be a year that might change history. It has that
Wow.
kind of potential, and that scale and scope of impact associated with it. Um,
Wow. So
yeah,
what are we talking? Like aliens? Are we
I
talking
I
like,
hope.
so yeah, me too.
No.
Well, they're
Uh,
already here.
well, I think that I like to sort of present the timelines for things, and then
Mm,
we can sort of come up with our own predictions or interpretations or ideations around it. And I always want to preface, especially, the material I'm going to share with our listeners today is not to come into this with fear, but to come into this with
mm.
curiosity and to come
Yeah,
into this with an open-mindedness.
thank you. And I would like to add on that line, I think it's really easy to see astrology, whether it's like Mercury in retrograde, it's a perfect example, but anything that we journey through, and it sounds like we're going to be journeying through a lot in 2025, as like these things that are happening to us, whether they're good or bad or in between. But if we remember that we are part of nature, which means we're a part of the cosmos is ordered universe, whatever is happening astrologically is happening through us as well. So it's not like we're separate and victim to the planets. Like we're part of it all.
I
And
love
so
that.
as
Yeah.
that can that's being shaken up, it's not just you that's being shaken up, the whole cosmos is. And I do believe, the thing that I believe the most is that there is an intelligence. It might be a great mysterious intelligence that we don't quite understand, but there is something that is beneath it all, something that's causing the planet to spin, something that causes the seasons to come and go like clockwork. And so, I really always want to invite us all to see ourselves as part of it rather than victim to it.
Right. I love that too, because it is a reminder. And I love the call out to the fact that we are nature, because it is true. We are nature. And this is something that we are experiencing as an opportunity for our own personal evolution and growth. And to be, you're here for a reason right now. You're here because you were meant to be incarnated at this moment in time, at this moment in history. And how amazing is it to witness some of these beautiful and magical celestial changes? How
Mm,
amazing is it to have the abilities and the resources to chat with people who are living in different countries like we are and form friendships
mm,
and talk
mm,
about the interconnectedness and the spirituality of it all? Like, what a cool time to be alive. And
mm,
with being in this really cool and connected time, we also have a lot of other things that us as humans have had previously too. This is not the first time that these planets have changed, but for all of us who are aware and who are conscious, it's an invitation to explore how we could embody that and lean into that and continue to also be in flow with these changes
mm.
too. Um,
Beautiful, beautiful. So tell us, like, what are the highlights of the year? I've heard something about June. Is that linked to 2020? Tell me what we should know.
So we have a lot of planets moving into new zodiac signs, and that's really the defining characteristic of 2025. Neptune is going to be ingressing, that means moving into Aries for the first time since the mid 1800s. We have Saturn moving into Aries for the first time since the mid 90s. We have Uranus moving into Gemini for the first time since the early 1940s. We have Jupiter moving into Cancer, and this one happens every 12 years. So this one is not on the same scale, but is part of this larger conversation of ingresses that we have. And then we also have a nodal change occurring too. The nodes are shifting from Aries and Libra, where they've been since 2023, onto the Virgo and Pisces axis, where they'll remain until 2027. So we can sort of um, dissect all of those and talk about what those connections are. But the broad stroke of it is that there's a lot of change happening. There's a lot of new beginnings. Um, for all of these planets that are moving into cardinal signs, Neptune, Saturn, Jupiter, and even the Aries and Libra nodes are going to touch this too. That 0 degree point that they're moving on, because when a planet first moves into a new zodiac sign, it hits 0 degrees. That is considered the world axis in astrology. And for us astrologers who work with the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn and sort of anchor all of our interpretations around these these points as they relate to our planet, these are some of the most key and core sort of foundational markers of astrology. Um, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn all coincide with equinoxes and solstices. And 0 degrees Aries in particular, which is where we're going to have Neptune and Saturn, and then also the nodes, the North Node in particular, that is the beginning of it all. That is the point of entry into a new world. 0 degrees Aries is not just the world axis, it's the beginning of the whole zodiac. So having planets that are on these points is tremendously potent in what it signifies for new beginnings, new potential, and the ability for us to really, draw a line in the sand separating the past from the future. So,
Mm,
from a tarot perspective, we can think of 0 and the Fool card, right? Like that's fully and completely what the energy is. It's that zero, we're stepping off a cliff, where are we going, right? And going back to the can analogy, this is the explosion, right? So what's bursting out? What new material, what new liquid, what new contents, what new information is going to be bursting out of all of these cans that have been sort of rumbling, that we've all felt at this point for many years, but especially within the past 12 months. And as we synthesize all of this, and now I do want to remind people as well that, like, we're going to have these planets move into these new zodiac signs in 2025, but they're so big. These planets are not just physically big, but their orbits are massive. Their orbits are very, very long. So this is going to be a transition over several years, right? As we integrate and figure out, what does it mean to embody and be with these planets in these new shifting zodiac signs. The real sort of, the two big headlines are around Neptune and Uranus, because these planets, Neptune has an orbital period of 165 years. Uranus has an orbital period of 84 years. And in 2025, they also start to connect. And they do not do this very often. So they're going to be making an aspect in 2025 called a sextile, which is a very harmonious aspect. And the last time that they made this aspect was actually in the mid 60s into the late 60s. It's a 5-part series when these two connect. And what I think is really cool about that is that when we think about the 1960s, this is often referred to as the decade, this is the anchor of the 20th century. This was the decade where everything changed. Coming into the 60s and coming out of the 60s, it was like two completely different worlds. And perhaps that Uranian and Neptunian connection, Uranus being the planet of revolution and Neptune being the planet of dreams and illusion and sort of our collective consciousness, and a positive connection between those really prompt new music, new creativity, revolution, the civil rights movement, environmentalism, thinking of women's rights, of reproductive rights, just thinking of what does it look like to make the world a more progressive and a more equitable space. And obviously looking back now, we're like, okay, that was like, there was a lot of things that we did not get quite right then, but here's our chance to try again. Here's our chance to give it another go. And I feel like there's going to be a lot of astrologers who also talk about some of the other flags around this, right? Like the last 3 times that Uranus has been in Gemini, in the 1700s, in the 1800s, and in the 1900s, it's corresponded with the American Revolution, the Civil War, and World War II. So some astrologers are going to fixate on that. And that can't be ignored. It can't be overlooked. But what also is going on that we didn't have in the 1940s during World War II was this Uranus-Neptune connection that was very much about, how can we fix it? How can we make it better? So I think that there's definitely some things that we can sort of flag as like, oh my goodness, what does this look like? What is going to happen on a societal collective level? And then we also have a lot of other touch points that are so beautiful and so exciting and so inspiring and such a gift to get to witness and experience. So it's going to be a back and forth between these energies.
Wow, that's really huge. And I really feel like I can feel within me this bubbling kind of like urge to kind of just say to people, like, create your art, like share your voice, do like reach for the thread that you're holding. um I know myself as a sensitive, knowing many sensitives on the planet, many of us have been going through what everyone is going through a couple of years earlier and thought we were going freaking insane while doing it. And now is the time to cultivate that. Now is the time to share your voice in a way that you're genuinely called to. Now's the way to be courageous, but also to just like trust the thread that you're holding versus like I know what it feels like to feel like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders, or what could I possibly do that's going to cause any kind of shift? But I think that is kind of this distraction energy that stops us from actually doing what we came here to do. And I know these past few years of such division have caused many people to just kind of opt out or tune out, particularly sensitive artist type. So yeah, with you sharing all of that about the potential supportive energies around creating art, sharing art, and that Neptune type energy, I just want to encourage that for all of us who are listening.
Yeah, I love that call out too, because I do think that when we talk about, you know, being on the precipice of a revolution, it can feel like really overwhelming.
Yeah.
Like how do I embody that? What's my role in it? Is it going to be scary? Is it going to destabilize everything that I have and am processing in my life? And I really believe that the answer to it is that we are going to just be taking it one step at a time. And in really doing the soul work, we are going to be prepared for whatever comes our way. And the soul
Mm,
work is creative work. The soul
mm,
work is tapping into your artistry, tapping into your creativity, and allowing yourself to get back in touch with who you were before you were sort of conditioned and beaten down by
mm,
society and the systems that say that you aren't good enough, or that your skills are irrelevant, or whatever it is, or that telling stories or making art or doing these things is not productive. Like, the revolution is also about you recognizing that your productivity is in your magic. Your
mm,
productivity is in your ability to create and ideate. And how are we going to have a better future if we can't create it? you know how are we going to
It's
have a
so
better
true.
future if we can't imagine it?
And because there's been such a lot since like 2018, 2019, 2020, and very much after that, where it's just felt so divisive and so like it's either this or that. And I think the same's the case. I've seen so many of us like kind of do it with our own journey, like, oh, this spiritual practice is wrong, this one's right now, rather than seeing it like, oh no, that was where I was then, and this is where I am now. This is what's serving me now, which is not to say what serves you isn't right. And I feel like I'm starting to see more bridge building of a little bit more. I know it's not everywhere, but I feel like I'm seeing a little bit more of that. Like, is that type of energy coming or not quite yet?
No.
Oh no.
No.
Damn.
Sorry to say, Rebecca. I think that
No.
there's definitely, the divisiveness is, how do I put this? Like, I think that we're going to feel more somehow um prepared and empowered around it.
Mm,
I don't feel like it is. I do feel like, if we think about the divisiveness and politics, for example, right?
mm,
We Politics are circular, and at a certain point, things start to meet back on either side, right? And somehow I feel like there is going to be we're going to find our way back to agreed some central understandings of what matters in the world, of what's important, of things that we can all collectively get behind. But I don't think that it's going to be an easy road to get there. And I don't think it's necessarily going to happen in 2025. There are so many other great things in 2025, though.
let's talk about them then.
Well, I mean, I think that just the new chapters, the new
Mm,
possibilities, what I've been advising um, my friends and listeners and community is, get really, really clear on what you want. Get really, really
mm,
clear on what lights you up. Get clear on where you find your daydreams wandering to. And let that really galvanize you. Let that inspire you. Follow those threads and and don't deny yourself what your soul is craving. Because
Mm.
come 2025, when these planets say, actually, like, "Meow, here I am, I'm establishing myself doing this thing," Neptune is going to be in Aries for 14 years.
Yeah.
When we and not to mention that Pluto just went into Aquarius and it's going to be there for 2 decades. When we
Mm.
establish ourselves in these moments right now, we are sort of providing the universe with a sort of you know a wish list of how we would like these experiences to manifest and metabolize for us, right? So if we're saying, like, I really, Neptune and Aries, I really want this to be the chapter in my life where I finally release my scarcity mindset and live each day with gratitude and abundance and, an optimistic glass half full point of view that invites more goodness into my life. And if we say, I want to establish that truth with this new beginning, then so it is. That is what we are working with, and we are defining what that experience is going to be like for ourselves. This is
So
a
you're
moment.
saying at this moment where there's so much planetary change and new beginnings, it's really crucial to be like, this is what I'm dreaming into. This is what I want.
Yes.
So we can kind
Yes.
of embrace that energy to create it.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And what new beginnings do you want? What is something that you have been thinking and hoping for and wanting to create? I mean, for me, just as an example, like, I have been so intimidated by YouTube my whole career. I have felt like it is untouchable. And like, I have had so much imposter syndrome around starting it. And my
Mm.
2025 vision is that I'm going to go into it. I'm going to tackle it. And that's,
Mm.
um, that's a small sort of microcosm and very personal expression of this, but that's the kind of sort of association that we can create. We can say, I've been scared of this and I really want a new beginning around this. I've been scared of
Mm.
of being vulnerable with a partner. And I really, with these new beginnings, like, I'm ready to give it a try. I've been scared of starting
Mm.
a family. I'm going to give it a try, whatever it is, if it's
Mm.
career, if it's love, if it's resources. We have these new beginnings where we can associate the new beginnings with things, with chapters in our life that we haven't yet endeavored.
Mm. Yeah. So what new chapter do you want? What new beginning do you want? Yeah, love it. And then is there any moments of the year, months of the year, any big things that we should be aware of?
Well, we have, and let me pull my dates out here. So I'm just going to go through sort of our timing. We have the nodes that are moving into Aries. I'm sorry, that are moving out of Aries and Libra. The nodes that are moving into Pisces, with the North Node in Pisces and the South Node in Virgo, that's going to be taking place in January of this coming year in 2025. So that's sort of our first touch point. Keep in mind that we start the year with a Mars retrograde. So that can always make things feel a little bit slow and a little bit clunky. So if January doesn't go as you had hoped it would, if you have these big resolutions or these big ideations for what 2025 could be, and in January it's like, what? I feel like I'm not on track at all. Don't worry. Mars retrograde is doing the work it's meant to be doing, slowing things down and helping us recalibrate, but is definitely, slowing things down too. So we have a Mars retrograde and the nodes changing. January, Mars retrograde ends in February. Then in March, we have Neptune moving into Aries. Also in March, we have eclipses, a lunar eclipse in Virgo and a solar eclipse in Aries. That's the last solar eclipse on the Aries Libra axis that started in 2023. So that's one chapter that's going to be officially closing as we start the new Virgo and Pisces series at that time of eclipses. Then we have Saturn moving into Aries, and that's going to be in May. We have Jupiter moving into Cancer, that's in June. We have Uranus moving into Gemini, that's in July. And then starting in August, we have those Uranus sextile Neptune transits, those aspects that I was mentioning. And I really think that the summer is going to be the sort of the main activity that we have going on. Keep in mind that Jupiter, Neptune, Uranus are going to be gathering again, and Saturn too, actually, are all going to be gathering at really low degrees of their zodiac signs. The last time something like this happened was 1989, which, was the fall of the Berlin Wall. So there's just a lot of possibility and a lot of potential for when these big planets come together and make change collectively. So I would say that the summer is really the moment that we're going to experience that happening. I forgot to mention that we do also have a Venus retrograde in March as well. So that's also something to keep on your radar.
And is
And
that like, does that affect relationships, or how does that affect
yeah, so
us?
Venus retrograde to me it is a gorgeous and very sacred retrograde. It goes retrograde for 40 days and 40 nights, and this illusion, this time period is mentioned many times in the Bible. And many scholars actually believe that that 40-day, 40-night period is a reference to Venus retrograde, because it is a time where Venus actually changes its position from our vantage here on Earth, either rising from before the sun, and then at the halfway point of it, it starts rising after the sun, or vice versa. So Venus goes through a metamorphosis during its retrograde cycle. And when it goes through this metamorphosis, it changes our perspective. It changes the way that we are approaching Venusian things like love, values, money, aesthetics, beauty. So it's a beautiful recalibration time. During this exact Venus retrograde cycle, the last one we had in these zodiac signs, Aries into Pisces, was in 2017. This is exactly the cycle that I met my husband during. I met my partner during a Venus retrograde. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that it is a very perfect example of how Venus retrograde could be a tremendous time for love, because Luke, my husband, was the first person I met who was he was the first like lovely man that I ever dated. And
Oh.
it was very retrograde because I was used to dating just the worst men in the whole world. And then Luke comes in
Mm.
during Venus retrograde, and I'm like, actually, maybe I want to give this a try with this lovely and
Mm.
gentle and spiritual person. So just as, to share with people that Venus retrograde could actually be the best time in your life for these things, though I do
Yeah.
caution against having elective surgery, getting tattoos, doing drastic haircuts, buying big purchases for our homes, like big couch, really expensive couches, because our aesthetics are going through a transition that on the other side of that we may
So
be
you
like,
might make a decision that you will regret.
yeah, exactly. But, one of the other signatures of 2025 is that we have all of the personal planets going retrograde in them. And that is somewhat unusual. I think that we haven't had that in a number of years. I remember we had that in 2016. I can't recall if we've had one since then, but Venus, Mars, and Mercury are all going to be retrograde at the same time.
Amazing. Wow. All right. And as we finish up, is there anything else that we need to know, or have we kind of covered it all?
I think the main takeaway is that this is going to be an exciting and energizing and full of potential and limitless possibilities year.
Mm. Beautiful. Well, we are all co-creating together, so that's a really beautiful invitation. Thank you so much for being with us.
Yes, thank you, Rebecca.
I love your new book. Do you want to tell everyone a little bit about that, and say where we can find you on YouTube too?
Oh, yes. Well, eventually it'll be on at Aliza Kelly, like everything else. Do I have my book here? Yes, of course I do. So yes, I have my book. It's all magic. It's actually a wonderful book to start the new year with, because it's 365 reflections on astrology, tarot, and manifestation. So this is a
Perfect.
book that can be used for every day of the year. But also no pressure to start on January 1st, because the book will meet you wherever you are. That's also the point of it.
Love it. And we did a great video, I think it was Insta Live, didn't we, on your book launch day, where
Yeah.
we used it like an oracle. So that's another fun way to use it.
Yes. Yes.
Amazing. All right, honey. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
And
you
thank you,
so much.
everyone, for listening. Yay.
Such a treat.
Thank you so much for being here with us for the astrology forecast for 2025. If you want to complete the year that was and dream into what new beginnings your soul is calling you to step into and answer the call of, then I want to invite you to check out the Work Your Light visioning process. It's available at rebeccacampbell.me/visioning. It's been done by like 10,000 people all over the world, and it is an amazing process I do every year. You can do it by yourself or with your friends and family as well. And as always, we have our soul inquiry for this episode, which is: what new beginning is your soul calling you to step into this year? What new beginning is your soul calling you to step into this year? And then once you've got that, I want you to think of one little baby step you can take, like in the next 24 hours, to act on that new beginning.